Hey y'all and welcome. My name is Hannah Gumbo and I am a visual artist in Acadiana, and I'm so excited to be working with you to create a positivity banner today. We're going to work with text and color and brainstorming to create a one-of-a-kind piece of artwork that reminds us how important positive words are. So this video is part of the Acadiana Center for the Arts online series, Virtual Art Studio. And Virtual Art Studio is really cool. It's a place where teaching artists present lessons in all kinds of art. So that's visual art, dance, music, and so much more. And you can enjoy it from anywhere, your classroom, home, wherever you are. So let's get started today. So first up, let me tell you a little bit about who I am and what kind of art I make. I am a visual artist, like I told you, and I primarily work with digital art like Photoshop and lots of painting with acrylic paint. So I'm going to show you a few examples of my work. And something I want to point out is that I do use a lot of text or words when I am creating artwork. So this first one says keep it full, and this is kind of playing off of the is your glass half empty or half full idea. And so I wanted to explore that and create all these different cups filled with water that has that text right there in the middle. And it's really important to me that when I'm using words in my art, that it's not like I'm writing a paper or writing a note to a friend, it's artwork. So I give myself full creativity to use uppercase and lowercase letters and script and not script. And I just have fun with it and play with it, just like you see here. Like I said, I love to paint, and so I actually do a good amount of murals, which are large paintings that are, say, like on a side of the building, like you see here. And so it's really important that I am not wasting any time when I do these projects. And so once again, you can see I'm using words, but I'm using words in a really specific way. This says sunny side up, and this is for a restaurant, but also the idea of sunny side up is to be on the positive or bright side, and so I kind of wanted to put that play on words here. And so you can see sunny side is within this big skillet, but then the word up I actually chose to put down below where you don't notice that one quite right away. It's kind of like a little hidden gem. And you can see that the side of the building has these long boards. So I was really trying to make sure that I made my words go up and down so that none of them got stuck under a shadow. This is another smaller painting that I've done that has a lot of text in it. And again, I just want to point out the fact that this is not written straight across like you'd see, written in a notebook. I have what I like to call bouncy words, where I'm really trying to fill in the shape of my canvas, and my letters aren't going off the edge, but they're also getting kind of close and they're playing off of one another. So sometimes a letter is a little bit smaller or a little bit larger depending on the space that I'm trying to fill. And you can see that the word with between the two pelicans kind of dips down a little bit below, just so that it can fit nicely between where the two birds are. And to me, that just makes it a little bit more interesting than straight across. And the last example that I'll show you is another mural painting. This one's actually on the ground, and it reads Drains to Bayou. And so with this project, it's actually to raise awareness that the only thing that should be going in drains is clean, fresh water, not trash, not old paint water, things like that. So same thing here. I kind of wanted to show like water, so I'm using blue colors, but I also have these kind of that dark blue shape that looks like waves kind of coming. So I wanted all of my letters to fit within that wavy shape. And so you can see with the word drains, the D is really small, whereas the S on it is much larger to fill inside the shape that I'm writing in. And that for the word to, I chose to write it a little bit differently. It has white in the background just to kind of have a contrast. So we're going to be doing some writing together and some art making. And so I want you to think about some of these examples and some of the ways that when we're creating art, we're going to write words differently than if we were just writing them for, say, a paper or writing like a note down for ourselves to remember. So for today's project, I'll just give you a quick rundown of the supplies that you'll need. We have definitely a pencil that you'll want to start with. And when I'm showing you examples today, I'll probably use like a Sharpie or something darker so that you could see it. If you feel confident doing that, feel free. Pencil's always a good way to start because you can erase and obviously start over. And anytime I'm drawing with pencil and figuring out a sketch, which you'll be doing today, you want to draw very lightly. So lightly that you can almost barely see your pencil. That's going to make erasing so much easier on you. So a pencil will be good. Any kind of white paper, it could be computer paper, it can be like paper from your notebook or a sketchbook. We're going to be doing some cutting out, so scissors and glue to combine shapes. Any kind of glue will work. I like stick glue. And then, of course, some kind of way to add color to your drawing. So whether that's markers, colored pencils, pens, you get to choose. And then some extra things that are great to have are a ruler or any kind of straight edge. You could actually use the side of a book or anything that you could trace in order to help you make straight lines. But if you have a ruler, that works. And sometimes instead of starting with white paper, I like to play around with colored paper. You can see some up here. So if you have that, you can pull that out too. And we'll get started. All right, so now we're gonna get ready and start our project. You will need your pencil and your sheet of paper in front of you. And we're gonna be working on like the back side of the paper. So we're gonna be creating a brainstorm list first and talking about some things and just writing down some quick notes. None of that will be a part of your actual project, so it doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't have to be super small or super big. It's up to you. This is just like writing on the back of our paper to get some ideas out. So let's talk a little bit about what the theme of our project is gonna be. When we talk about positive words, the reason for that is just a little bit of how our brains are actually wired and actually how they work. We can say all day long that we want to like be positive and think positive, but our brains are actually really simple. The more we think a thought, the more that thought becomes easier to think in the future. And the way that I like to think of it is our thought patterns and the things we think about are kind of like little ditches, right? And sometimes the ditch is really small, like in our yard, and it's got maybe like a puddle in it, but we can still jump over it. And then sometimes we're driving in a car and the ditch on the side of the road is so big, our entire car can fall into it, right? So there's different sizes when we think about a little ditch. But basically, the more our brains think of a thought, it's like it's a small ditch, but it gets wider and wider and deeper every time we remember and we think about that thought. And that's called neural pathways. And so, unfortunately, a lot of the things that we think about and the little ditches we create have to do with negative things that come into play. So whether that's maybe somebody says a negative comment towards us about our hair or our shoes, or we don't do so great on a project, or we fail a quiz, or whatever it may be. The more we think about that, the easier it is for our brain to just dwell and go right into that little ditch and keep thinking that. But the cool side is that also works with positive things. And there are so many positive things that are a part of our life and a part of who we are that we can choose to focus on and choose to think about. And we can grow that little thought pattern ditch the same way we did for the other thought. So this project is just going to be a reminder of that. And so even though this is an art project and we want to use our creativity, we're actually going to start off with kind of a cool exercise that's just getting our brains going with a word list. So I'm going to ask you to do something a little bit different. We're going to start off with an exercise, and we're not going to use our pencils just yet. We're actually going to close our eyes, and we're just going to go somewhere together in our mind. So you can put your pencil down for just a moment, and then when we come back together, you'll go ahead and write down a few things on the back of that paper. So I'm going to close my eyes too, and I want you to think about somebody in your life that is a positive person. And when I say that, that can mean a lot of different things. Basically, what I'm thinking about is somebody that if I had a bad day, if I spent even a little bit of time with them, normally when I leave, I'm in a better mood than when I got in, right? So close your eyes and think about who that person is for you. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's a parent, a teacher, a cousin, an aunt and uncle. Could be somebody that's maybe you've never met in person. It could be like a YouTube person or a celebrity. But who's that person that you go to when you need a positive boost? And when I'm thinking about that person, I want to think, well, what about them is positive? What are some words I would use to describe them? Usually they bring a smile to my face, right? So why is that? What's some things that we could think about to describe them? Something I'm thinking about is that friends that I have that I can tell something to and I know that they're not going to tell anyone else, that's somebody who's really trustworthy. I'm also thinking of people in my life that are funny. Sometimes I just need to laugh. Some people that are really confident or creative that inspire me. So just give you a few more seconds. Okay, awesome. You can open your eyes. And we just close our eyes to focus, to kind of just drown out everything else. So now I want you should have thought of at least one person, it can be a few, and a few words can be going in your brain of how you would describe them. So I'm going to write a few down, and I want you to write a few down on your paper too. So just grab your pencil, and on anywhere on your paper, this is going to be the back, so you don't have to write super hard. I want you to jot those words down, and I will too. Okay, so you should have at least, I'd say, 3 words on your paper. Here's some of the things I thought about. Somebody who's confident. Like I said, that kind of inspires me. Sometimes I need to be around someone like that because I start to worry, and it's helpful to be around someone really confident. It's also great to be around somebody funny because there's a lot of serious things sometimes in life, and sometimes we just need to laugh. And then creativity is really important for me. So I love being around people that are creative. So I'm going to keep this list going. I want you to add a few more. It could be the exact words I have here. It could be some other ones that you thought of. And I also want you to think of different words to describe the same attribute. So if someone's funny, how else could we say that? They're humorous, they're silly, they're imaginative, right? We could come up with all these words. So go ahead and add a few more that come to mind. Okay, awesome. So I added a few more words here. Feel free to copy any of these down on your paper. I'll point a few of them out. So as I'm thinking of words, I'm also thinking of, what's another way I can describe that? So with smart, I have intelligent, right? Thoughtful. Next to funny, I have hilarious, witty. Then we also have things like, if you think of someone who's kind, how can we write that? Do we want to write the word kind, or do we want to write kindness? We can write the word joy or joyful, right? And that's important to think about because if you are a little bit nervous about producing a word or drawing a word on your artwork, maybe you don't want a word that's very long. Maybe you want a shorter word like bold or brave, especially if you want to do something interesting, like you really like doing really swirly letters or something that's really kind of cool. A smaller word will give you more space to do that. Or maybe you want to challenge yourself and you're not really good at spacing and you want to choose a big word to make sure that you could fit it all in and kind of practice doing that. So maybe think about that and look at some words, maybe see some ones that kind of just call out to you or you notice that you want to write on your paper. And right now you should have anywhere from 3 to 5 words on the back of your paper written. And those words are just positive things that would describe someone in your life. So I'll give you a few more minutes, seconds to write those down. And then ultimately what we're going to do is just choose one. And so you can circle a word on your paper. It could be your favorite word. It could be the word that you just feel like drawing on your paper today. And one word will be circled, and that's the one that we're actually going to use for the project today. Okay, so go ahead and circle that, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, awesome. So right now you should have your brainstorm list on the back with one of your words circled. That's perfect. Go ahead and flip your paper over, and we're going to prepare our surface or our canvas. So we're going to create an interesting shape. It's going to be the shape of a pennant flag, so basically a long triangle shape. And I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do that. If you'd like to use a ruler and a pencil, you can do that. You are basically figuring out the middle point of one of the sides of your paper, so you could do that with a ruler. Right about here, I'll make a little dot. And so when we think about our flag, it's going to be coming to a point right here at this middle dot, and then it's going to go all the way out to this corner and this corner. And so I would just be using my ruler to connect these points. That's one side. And when I get it or exactly where I want it, I just always want to hold really tight with my ruler with the hand that's not drawing. Okay, and that's one way that I can create this pennant flag shape that I'm going to be drawing on. Okay, once you have this, whether with your ruler or a different method, the goal is going to be to cut it out and end up with this nice long triangle right here. If you don't have a ruler, or maybe you have a larger sheet of paper and this ruler doesn't really fit or work with that, I'll show you another way to achieve the same shape. You can also work with colored paper like this. With this method, you don't need a pencil or a ruler. You simply take one of the smaller edges and you find the halfway point by pinching it right here. You can see that I've done that here, and I've added a dot. This is the same steps. I'm finding the middle of the paper. So here, here, and here are going to be the different points that I'm trying to get to. And then once I know this point and this point, I'm going to slowly move my paper to fold lines and create the same shapes I just did with the ruler. So I'll show you what that looks like. You can see here that I've created the same shape, but just with folding and making a few marks. And then just like my white sheet of paper, the goal would be to cut that shape out. And we'll end up, everyone's shape will be slightly different, but we're going to end up with some nice, long, skinny triangles. And then if you want, you can choose another color paper to contrast that, just like we see here. Okay, so now you have your nice triangle cut out, and you could take your glue and glue that to another sheet of paper, a colorful sheet of paper. You can leave it as is, where it's inside this rectangle, or once you glue this down, you can actually cut around the edge to create sort of a decorative border. If you do that, you want to make sure that that contrasting color shows up. Don't cut all of it off. So I'll show you a few examples. With my Brave flag right here, I started with a white sheet of paper, and then I went ahead and used a yellow sheet of paper, and when I cut around it, I just wanted to make sure that the yellow still showed to where there was a nice border. I also did the same thing here. You can see that this green paper is showing, but I went ahead and I made this edge nice and scallopy. So you can do that. You can leave a decorative edge and cut it out to look like just a flag with two colors, or you can keep it on the rectangular paper and leave it as is. It's up to you. Go ahead and glue down your papers and we'll get started on our next step in just a minute. All right, now before we get started in actually writing our word on our paper that we've cut out, I want to go over a few different scenarios for what happens when we try to add a word or add text to a specific type of shape. So let me give you a few examples. All of our triangles that we've cut out are slightly different. But whatever shape you're working with, you want your word to interact really nicely with your cut shape. So my example here, what's wrong with this? If my word is brave, do you see how I've just written this just like it would be on a sheet of paper? It's not using up any of this space, and it looks kind of lonely, like there's too much gaps and open space between it. Here, we've used up the space, but do you see how there's no room around my flag? It's all the way touching the edge, and that feels too tight and too uncomfortable. So the goal would be something like this. Do you see that as my flag is larger, my B is larger, and as my flag goes smaller, so do my letters. My E gets to be much smaller than my B here. And I could run my finger all the way around the flag, and I have a gap all the way around and a gap in between. This is nice and spaced out, so this is what we're going to be going for. I'll show you a little trick to lay out letters. This is something that I use when I'm creating artwork. If my word is brave here, and you may want to look at your word once you're finished watching me do this, I want to count how many letters it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know that I'm trying to make space for 5 letters here. Another thing I might do is find whichever letter is in the middle. In this case, the letter is A. So when I'm laying this out, if I start and I just start putting my word in, do you see what's starting to happen? I have too much space left over, even though I'm trying to make it work. So let's see if we could try that again. By figuring out which letter is in the middle, I can actually start writing my word with the middle letter instead of the first letter. So I'd find the middle of my flag. Got it. Then I might go to the first letter, B. Now remember, I'm making this fill up the space, but I know that I have to fit 2 letters right here. And then I might do the last letter, E. Again, I know that I need to fit 2 here, and I know that this letter has to get smaller as I go. Now I'll go back and fill in the other 2 missing letters. Now I know that I have all of this space to fit in my V. Now here I can make some decisions. I have space for an R. I can go all the way down, or maybe I want to make the R just sit right here on the top and make this B even bigger right here. Do you see how I'm erasing and I'm thinking about shapes, and I want everything to fit in, but some things can be bigger and some things can be smaller? Let's do one other example together. So I talked about when we add in text, we can do a combination of uppercase letters, lowercase letters, swirly letters. We can make some letters thicker. This is an art piece, so we can continue to add things that maybe we wouldn't add to just writing a paper with this word. So let's say that our word is 6 letters and it doesn't have a perfect middle point. So you can see that the middle of the word joyful would actually be between the Y and the F. So if I was going to use the method that I just showed you to lay the word out, I would want to put the Y and the F in the middle of my flag to get started. And you don't have to do it this way. You can start with the first letter and go all the way down, but I want you to be thinking about keeping space around the edges of your letter. and making sure everything has equal space between it. And because we're doing things in this way, it's going to be very important that you write lightly with your pencil and that you erase and move letters around before you wind up on your final word. So you can see here that if my word is joyful, maybe I want to do nice bouncy letters. My O can be smaller. Maybe I want to leave room for this Y, or I can do them all uppercase here. And I'll show you one last time how I would lay this out. I like to start with the middle letters to make sure I have room for everything. So I want the Y and the F to be towards the middle. Maybe I'll start with a really fun Y and maybe a lowercase kind of smaller F. Then I'm going to go to my first letter and my last letter, J. And I only need to leave room for one more letter, so I know that this J can take up a lot of space. L. I can do a lowercase L, but I think here I want it to be uppercase. So now I'll fill in my final letters. And then I can personalize them. I can make them thicker. Maybe I want them to have little tops to the letters. And I can play with it and make it my own. Maybe even here I want to turn this into a sun. Okay, so go ahead and lightly lay your word out with pencil. Move things around if necessary. And as soon as you get something that you like laid out in pencil, you can move on to Sharpies or markers or adding color in any way that you want. Hey, how was that? Was that fun? It's always a little tricky when we're getting started and working on new things. So just take that as your practice flag, and then I'll show you a few examples. Now that you've done one, you can always come back and try out a different method of doing the flag, maybe a different word. Maybe this time you want to try using colored paper or doing something different with the lettering. If you've done it once, you could definitely do it again. With the last two examples I've showed you, this is much larger paper, which is kind of fun. And I've left room for lots of little drawings that I can add in, little designs. I'll also show you some smaller examples. You can see here that this is very simple. I've just used a white sheet of paper, I've glued it on a colored paper, and I've just stuck with simple crayon to put my word in. I'm doing nice lines, trying to follow the rules of letting everything be spaced out, but also really large and filling up the space. It's also fun to do some smaller ones, and that way you can experiment with some of the letters being shorter, longer, maybe just using marker, paint pens. You could see on the word loving how I've used kind of the tail of some of these letters. A V can just end here, but I've kind of flipped it up just like I did with the L to kind of fill in the space. Or sometimes I just use lines and polka dots to fill it up. Using black paper with a paint pen sort of looks like a blackboard or chalk on a blackboard. And a marker, you can kind of create any of the colors that you want, or you can keep it to just one color like I did here. Another really fun thing is to work completely in paper, and sometimes I like to challenge myself with that. And so I did the first two steps that I did with you, but then instead of drawing my word, I actually cut it out of scraps of paper and glued it to where this is entirely made up of paper. And I kind of like the look of this too. So you can see there's so many different ways to take this idea and experiment in different ways and make it your own. So go ahead and make another one if you have time and try a new technique. Hey, thanks so much for creating with me today. I know that I had a lot of fun, and I hope you did too, making all of our cool different positivity banners and just brainstorming and thinking about the different things that we could think about that are good for our brain and not just the negative stuff. So I want to encourage you that even though we finished this project, that would be a little reminder, the project that you made of just trying to focus your thoughts on some of the good things that happen throughout the day. And I also want to challenge you. It's important for you, but it's also so important for those around us. So use your creativity, point out the positive things that you see and notice in other people, and lift them up and encourage them through not just your art, but the words that we speak. Thanks again for making art with me, and be sure to come back soon next week. We're going to have more videos on the Virtual Art Studio page.